Hi everybody, it's Tuesday, and you know what that means. Okay, in this week's video, I want to make some clarifications and some corrections to my last video, which was on John Hagee's Four Blood Moons book. I also want to get to the heart of the matter of what really motivates that book and him writing it to begin with, and then I want to demonstrate and put a spotlight on how not only does John Hagee use this manipulation, but pretty much all of religion, especially evangelicals in the United States. So let's get to the first point. Okay, let me get to corrections and clarifications about my last video on John Hagee's book, Four Blood Moons. There we go. This is the book. Yes, I have it. It was sent to me as a Christmas present. Anyway, in the last video, I mentioned that there were probably hundreds of tetrads, which is 4 blood moons in a row, since Christ walked the earth, and that's not correct. Information I had read on it led me to believe there could have been hundreds, and we know of at least 8, possibly 9, since Jesus walked the earth. 9 tetrads. But that doesn't invalidate the point I was making in the video. The point I was making in the video is John Hagee is saying that this particular tetrad that is happening now in 2014 and 15 means he says throughout his book that he talks about the rapture and about Jesus coming back throughout the book, and he's talking about all kinds of scary stuff that will happen, anarchy in the United States and around the world, and basically the Antichrist and tribulation. However, he's backpedaling a little bit now. What I wanted, my challenge is to Hagee is, why does he think this is now the so-called beginning of the end of the world, which is what he is implying, and he's stressing very, very strongly. This is the beginning of the end of the world, and why during those other 8 or 9 events that have happened since Christ walked the earth, why didn't it happen then? So if it didn't happen in the first one, it didn't happen in the second one, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th. Why now? He's talking about it as though this is the big one. It's no different than any other time it happened in the world, and it's not going to have any different effect than it did any other time in the world. He says every time one of those 4 blood moons happened in a row, one of those tetrads, he says that something significant happened to Israel. Well, you know what? A lot of significant things have happened to Israel, not just 8 or 9 times in the past 2,000 years, but all the time. Every year something significant happens in Israel. World War I and World War II were fought in the historical territory of Israel, and there were no blood moons back then, and those are pretty significant. So it's all smoke, and it's all done for one particular reason. It makes a lot of money. Now let me get to part 2. Okay, money. That's the real motivator behind this book and everything else that John Hagee does. And how does he get the money out of these people? Fear and hatred. Throughout this book, it's full of fear and it's full of hatred. Hating this world, hating certain people in this world, and blaming those people for bringing the judgment of God upon our nation and everything else. Talking about gay people, abortion, the list goes on and on, actually. They don't like, they feed on people's fear, and they feed on people's hate. John Hagee is doing a typical job in this book. He does it in all the stuff that he produces, and he gets people who are motivated by fear and hatred to give him a lot of money. It's a New York Times bestseller. It was a New York Times bestseller when it first hit the market. He's making a crap load of money, and it's all because of fear. I know it. I know. The person who sent this book is my mother. She's motivated by fear. She fears that I might go to hell. She fears that her children might go to hell because of their lifestyle or whatever, or what they believe or what they don't believe. And so it's a very dangerous thing, and it works really well. Hagee's not alone in this. Using fear and using hatred is how all of your religious celebrities work. That's how they get the money out of you. Kenneth Copeland, he's got his own zip code. He doesn't even need a street address. They get 100,000 pieces of mail a week, and it's loaded with money. And he uses their fear and their distress over finances and says, if you give to me, God will financially bless you. It's all fear. It's all fear. They all motivate people by fear. Now let me get to the third part of this, because it really does affect you. How does this affect you and me? Well, in addition to lining their own pockets and buying 20 planes like Kenneth Copeland has done, or Harold Camping, who used his fear motivation to say that the world was coming to an end in May 2011, which never happened, yet a lot of his followers sold all their possessions, gave their money to him, they went dirt broke, and he wound up with a nest egg of $84 million due to the financial ruin of his own followers. But it doesn't stop there. They have an agenda. They not only want to control their followers, they want to control the people around them. They want to control everybody else. They tell you that they're taking money for missions and other things, but they're funneling money into Christian organizations that write laws, and then they lobby state and federal legislators to pass these laws so that they can discriminate legally against people they hate. They want to control women. They don't like women having rights. They don't like children having rights. And they don't like gay people having rights. They don't like black people having rights. Their whole political movement started. They weren't even politically involved until the Supreme Court ruled that they couldn't discriminate against black people. And that was through the Bob Jones Bible College case that went to the Supreme Court, because they had segregation on their college campuses and did not allow interracial dating. And the Supreme Court ruled against them, and it infuriated the religious people because they wanted to be able to at least discriminate within their own walls. And that's what started their whole political agenda, and it has gotten more and more powerful, and they are funding these things, and people in Africa now and Russia are dying because of laws they got passed there. We've got laws going onto the books, or bills being produced here so that they can legally discriminate here as well. They have convinced people not to vaccinate their children, and children have died. They tell people how to beat their children into submission, and children have died. And they are pushing for legislation in state laws like Texas, Oklahoma, and a few others, so that children are not taught some things, and they're forced to teach them other things that aren't even scientifically valid. And it goes on and on. They're pushing for sodomy laws to come back, and that they're basically trying to get into your bedroom. They are trying to affect your children. They are definitely having an impact on your family, and it's not good. And the money, the well, it has no bottom. It's a very deep well of money that they have to draw on. That's how it affects you. You know, if the gospel revolution had 1/100th of what came into Hagee's ministry or into Copeland's ministry over the course of a year, we could get the unbelievable exposure that we can only dream of. The gospel could get so much exposure if we just had 1/100th of what they get in a given year. 1/100th. So please do not be fooled by these things. I've had gospel revolutionaries call me about the 4 blood moons because they thought, you know, I think Hagee's onto something, and it made them nervous. See, it made them, a gospel revolutionary, nervous. It's serious, folks. So if you have, this is the only time I've ever done this on a video, and I don't plan on doing it again. But if you have a few spare dollars and you think about the gospel revolution and you know how much good the gospel did you, throw a few bucks to the gospel. And you know what? The more people we reach, the less people they will. Have a good week.